Unknown stories of the legendary John Wick that no one has heard of. Chapter 1. John Wick vs. Chickens. Once upon a time, John Wick decided to take a break from his usual routine of seeking revenge and killing bad guys. He decided to go on a peaceful vacation to a remote island in the Caribbean. While enjoying his time on the island, John came across a group of chickens that were causing chaos in the local village. Being the good guy that he is, John decided to help catch the chickens and bring them back to their owner. However, John soon found out that catching chickens was not as easy as he thought it would be. The chickens were fast and elusive, and John had trouble keeping up with them. To make matters worse, the island locals found his attempts to catch the chickens quite amusing and began laughing and taking photos. Determined not to be beaten by a bunch of chickens, John kept at it, chasing them through the streets and alleys of the village. Eventually, after much effort and a few embarrassing moments, John managed to catch all the chickens and return them to their owner. Despite the humiliation he endured, John couldn't help but laugh at himself and the ridiculous situation he found himself in. From that day on, he became known as the chicken catcher on the island and would always smile whenever he heard his new nickname. Chapter 2. John Wick rescues his dog from a dragon. Once upon a time, John Wick woke up with a terrible hangover. He couldn't remember what he did the night before, but he knew it was something crazy. He stumbled out of bed and noticed that his beloved dog was missing. That's when he realized what he had done. He had accidentally traded his dog for a bag of magic beans. Determined to get his furry friend back, John set off on an adventure to find the magic beans. He searched high and low, asking everyone he met if they had seen the beans. Finally, he stumbled upon a wise old man who claimed to know where the beans were. The old man directed John to a nearby castle, guarded by a fierce dragon. John was hesitant at first, but he knew he had to face the dragon if he wanted to get his dog back. He took a deep breath, unsheathed his trusty pencil, and charged towards the castle. The dragon roared and breathed fire, but John was quick on his feet. He dodged the flames and lunged at the dragon with his pencil. To everyone's surprise, the pencil turned out to be a magical weapon that could pierce even the toughest dragon scales. After a fierce battle, John finally defeated the dragon and made his way to the castle. Looking around the corridors, he heard the faint barking of his beloved dog. He followed the sound and finally found his furry friend locked in a cage at the top of the tower. John used a pencil to pick the lock and freed his dog. They got out of the castle, but not before they picked up a bag of magic beans on the way. As they left the castle, John couldn't help but feel grateful for his trusty pencil. He knew that without it, he would never have been able to defeat the dragon and save his dog. John returned home with his dog and his treasure, grateful for the wild adventure he had experienced. He knew that he would never forget the lessons he had learned along the way, and that his faithful pencil would always be there to help him cope with any challenge. Chapter 3. John Wick, Napkin Ninja. One day, John Wick was at a high-end restaurant, trying to enjoy a nice dinner. Suddenly, a group of rowdy teenagers entered the restaurant and began causing a commotion. They were yelling, throwing food and making a mess. John tried to ignore them and continue eating his meal, but their behavior became increasingly disruptive. Finally, John had enough and decided to take action. He calmly got up from his table and walked over to the teenagers. They looked at him with confusion, not realizing who he was. John looked at them with his signature stoic expression and said, "Excuse me, could you please keep it down? Some of us are trying to enjoy our meals." The teenagers looked at him with disbelief, not sure if they should take him seriously. Suddenly, John pulled out a handful of napkins and began folding them into intricate shapes, like swans and elephants. The teenagers watched in amazement as John continued folding napkins, creating a whole zoo of animals on the table. The noise level in the restaurant dropped to a whisper as everyone watched in awe. Finally, John finished his display of napkin art and calmly returned to his table, resuming his meal as if nothing had happened. The teenagers, now completely silent, looked at John with newfound respect and admiration. From that day on, John Wick became known as the Napkin Ninja, and his unique talent for napkin folding became the talk of the town. Chapter 4. John Wick got a job as a handyman. Once upon a time, John Wick decided to retire from his life of violence and settle down to lead a peaceful life. He moved to a quiet little town in the countryside and got himself a job as a handyman at the local hardware store. On his first day of work, John was eager to impress his new boss and coworkers. He was tasked with fixing a leaky faucet in the store's bathroom. Being a former hitman, John had no experience in plumbing, but he was confident he could figure it out. After spending hours trying to fix the faucet, John realized he had no idea what he was doing. He decided to take a break and grab a coffee from the store's break room. As he was sipping his coffee, John accidentally spilled it all over himself and the floor. In a fit of frustration, John kicked the coffee table, sending it flying across the room and smashing into the wall. To his horror, he realized he had also broken a display case containing valuable tools. Feeling embarrassed and defeated, John went to his boss and confessed to the damage he had caused. To his surprise, his boss simply chuckled and said, "Don't worry, John. We'll just take it out of your pay." John couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all and how different his new life was compared to his old one. From then on, John made sure to stick to what he knew best, fixing things with his guns instead of his tools. At the end, John Wick says thank you to all of you and advises you to subscribe to the channel and continue watching. Soon there will be a lot of stories on the channel with the participation of different heroes.